next speaker is Mr. Mohamad Faiz, Director Ground of Solutions Singapore. He has more than 10 years of experience of facilitating and implementing programs that deliver social impact. And the topic he will be sharing his insights is aligning sustainability with business performance. Over to you, Mr. Faiz.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Just a quick check. Do you hear me okay?
Yes, you're audible.
All right. Great. Thank you so much. I just came in and I really would like to thank Basil. I got your name correct. I loved your sharing and it was really enjoyed to see that perspective, a bit more academic. Whereas for myself, I'm a bit more of a practitioner. I'm not really trained in the area of sustainability, just slightly trained. I come from a background where a very varied background. I was in the military for 10 years. Then I went into business. I did social enterprise, and I was involved with a food charity where that was where I started with this whole food sustainability, food security area. And subsequently, I went on to study a bit more, and I just finished my business sustainability management with Cambridge. And so I'm seeing things really from a fresh lens, and at the same time from a business lens, because I run my own company. I provide consultancy to organizations, and I see there's a lot of potential in which we bring two things together: the idea of sustainability and businesses. And that's something that I will be sharing about today. Okay, so basically this is me. So as I shared earlier on, I'm really very much a practitioner more than actually an academic in this field of sustainability. But I have the interest. I did my studies, and basically what I'm sharing is a bit of my own reflection or takeaway in terms of how businesses should be aligning sustainability with business performance, because it's actually beneficial not just to the environment but also to the business going ahead. And I'll be sharing a bit more in terms of how organizations and businesses can actually take that action, and in a very simple three-step way of moving it ahead, and just sharing a bit of the articles which basically I took reference from, right? So the first part of it is basically, this is from IMD.org. They just gave us, so why do businesses need to embrace sustainability, and how can they do it? This was an interesting article as I read through. It shared a bit more about how businesses embrace sustainability. And if I was to build upon what I shared earlier, yes, most of the businesses are the bigger ones, are the ones which are required to do reporting, are the ones which have structures of people who are really looking at the sustainability factor. And therefore, yep, while it's great in terms of creating long-term value, right? Given that organization operates in an ecological, social, and economic environment. However, how relevant is this to the small, medium enterprises? How can we bring it down to the ground? And I hope in my sharing and even in the questions that we share, we can actually open up and explore how these things are possible. But I truly believe that it is possible, and that these are lessons that can take away from the larger organizations that we can adapt to smaller, medium enterprises, right? And so the key question that people ask is, how do they do it, right? It's a simple knowing and doing gap, right? There's one part which earlier on you spoke about, the lack of awareness of what is this sustainability. Okay, but once you solve the awareness function, right? Research has shown that, this article has shown that basically only 1 out of 4 businesses that actually understand sustainability were able to take action on it. So yes, we can focus on the awareness part of it, but beyond awareness, there's only 25% that's actually doing it. So only the ones who actually do it actually can embrace it and can make it something that is sustainable or useful for the organization. And the other part of it is the compliance and competitive advantage gap. The thing is that also 1 out of 4 only sees it as an area of being a competitive advantage to the person, right? So the idea of this, if businesses want to embrace sustainability, they must do these 2 things, right? They must take action, right? They must be able to move ahead. It's not enough to just know, but just to take that leap of faith, to take that bit of risk, right? That was mentioned earlier. and to actually see it as a way to compete, to be different, and to be able to step ahead of the curve of everybody else, right? And so what I'll be sharing later on will be 3 key focus areas for businesses in terms of how can they align sustainability with business for performance, and how basically these 3 areas can really help them take that step forward, right? In terms of really embracing that sustainability agenda, and subsequently how it will lead to actual real business performance. So the 3 points are: first is top leadership and management buy-in. Research has shown sustainability efforts in organizations only work when they have top leadership and management buy-in, because they are the ones who dictate basically what's your objectives, what's your KPIs, your KRAs, and whatnot, right? They are the ones who basically decide what resources go to where, right? So that is what the first critical thing that you want to look at, right? The second critical thing that we have to look at, or focus areas, is the commitment towards long-term goals, because it's a long haul. Because when you want to shift or pivot something, making incremental changes is great. Yes, it's nice to see that low-hanging fruits, but it must always be focused towards a long-term goal, because making small steps is okay so long as it's in the correct direction. If you're making small steps but you're not, like 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, it doesn't make a difference, right? It is just basically stepping around the same area and not progressing somewhere. And the last part of it is to establish key metrics and measurement, because everyone knows in business, right? Whatever doesn't get measured doesn't get done, or if things that get measured, these are the things that actually get done. So these are 3 focus areas when you talk about aligning sustainability with business performance, and I will expand a bit more what I mean by that. All right. Okay, the first part, okay, top leadership and management buy-in. So this is an article about how you align profit and environmental sustainability. The reason why I'm quoting a lot is because there's so much that we can talk about, but I think the time is so short. So I thought, okay, maybe you guys can just research and find out a lot more. But one of the things why how you get top leadership management buy-in is to be able to share with them that basically this is the opportunities, this is the reasons why it sustainability efforts may have not worked in the past, right? In terms of how you can, sustainability needs to be integrated in long-term business strategy. That's why you need them to buy in. That's why they are necessary to make sure that sustainability is not just a CSR effort or a small little token that you do just to show to people, yes, I'm doing something green, I'm planting trees, I'm reducing my carbon emissions, but it's not encompassed in the bigger picture in terms of how you do things. It's not in the culture, right? And so that's the first part, right? And the second part is you need to see how improved sustainability, right, is valued enough such that resources are committed there, right? Internal capital allocation is given towards improving sustainability. It's not just a token, okay, I give you 10% of my cost, and then that's it. No more, no less. It has to lead to more resources committed into the area such that it builds capability. It's not a cost function. It cannot be a cost function. It has to be a function where you invest. It creates ROI. Whether it's short-term, long-term is another story, right? And the last part is basically the alignment of the goals between sustainability team and financial team. Because typically stakeholders always talk about KPIs in terms of numbers. No, I put in $1 million, I must take back $1.5 million or $2 million. But if the financial team needs to understand in the longer term perspective, sustainability may cost a bit more in the short term, but it will reap more rewards in the longer term, right? And the last part, the metrics, I will share a bit more later. And there are many ways to solve them. And top leadership and management needs to see both these aspects of it, because most of the time you just see, okay, I don't need this is not necessary, I can still do things as per normal. But actually you have to be able to show them that if we are able to overcome this, it leads to a lot more competitive advantage. And as you can see on the right side, these are the different organizations from Alcoa, Grief, Mars, Siemens. They have shifted the ceiling in terms of where they're going, what are they going to do. You know, Johnson & Johnson provided 40 million in capital relief for the greenhouse gas reduction projects. So really looking at putting resources, really. So there is that type of support, and that's critical for to align sustainability with business performance. Okay. And if I were to simplify the whole thing, I know there's a lot of things, but look at it from a operational and strategic perspective. Um, the commercial impact of sustainability is in the sixfold, right? First, when you go into sustainability efforts, right, there will be increased productivity and employee engagement. There will be potential for that because you look at things from a more efficient manner. You look at resources. You don't want to waste resources, but what is a better way to use resources? We talked about looking in terms of the cyclical manner in which we use products. No, instead of just produce, use, throw, is how can this be reused, repurposed, and that results in more productivity. And you talk about employee engagement, people also feel that they are doing things which are meaningful and purposeful. So that's one of the things which really has a benefit to the organization, right? It also prevents or reduces the level of operational disruptions in an organization, and it actually gives you a lot more control over things such as price rises, stranded assets. No, stranded assets are less likely to happen, right? If you look at in terms of sustainability initiatives, right? You also are able to shape business models and propositions in a different way, right? And of course, things which are very heavily used now is really in terms of brand and reputation as key stakeholder relations, because everyone wants to be seen to be doing sustainability, right? And that's kind of the optics of it all, but there are deeper underlying things, benefits, right, which basically has impact on the organization and which top leadership and management will value a lot more, right? And going back to the whole thing, this is kind of what I studied with Cambridge Institute of Sustainable Leadership, is this impact leadership model, right? To get top leadership and management buy-in, we need to first look at how this can achieve commercial success. You look at the business purpose, right? That basically see how we can achieve commercial success, at the same time shape the context for the business and deliver sustainable future. So this kind of mindset, right, is what we need for the business. And subsequently, the type of leaders that we need to kind of shape leaders which are more purpose driven, which are cultivating the right values, thoughts and practices, and are reflective and adaptive. It's a model. I wouldn't say it's perfect. It's not there, but I think with increased conversation, increased engagement, right, at a global level, this is something which we are progressing towards, and which I feel is a way to get top leadership management to see things in a different way, right? So yeah. Okay, the next part is commitment to long-term goals. All right. We spoke a bit about the branding aspect of things of sustainability, right? The thing is that it's not just about the branding part, right? Branding part, everyone knows about greenwashing, right? Basically, they do things which has no proof, which are vague. There's the hidden trade-offs in terms of damage to let's say you do something good one side, reduce carbon emission, but maybe in other parts you're actually causing other damage, right? So there's always a trade-off. Solar panels, people say, oh, clean energy, yes, but the production of solar panels and the disposal of solar panels 20 years down the road, right? No one talks about it, right? So there's a lot of things which it appears great, right, but in the long term may not be something which is ideal, right? And so in terms of gaining commitment towards long-term goals, the way organizations commit to it, the way how we speak about the sustainability efforts, it needs to build up on trust, right? And I put in a bit of Franklin Covey's 13 behaviors of high trust, right? Being able to talk straight about it. When we talk about sustainability efforts, right, it's not about just trying to beat around the bush, trying to make things pretty, but being straight about it. Yes, it's going to cost more, right? Yes, it is going to, maybe some people's jobs are going to be affected, right? But in the long run, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we can deliver good results, not just immediate, right, but also long term, right? It may be difficult for you now, difficult for the employee who's used to doing things at a certain way, because he has no change the way we do things. Like, for example, we look at the oil palm plantations, right? When you talk about the slash and burn technique of clearing forests, that's the most efficient, cost-efficient way to do things. But yet it is not the best for the environment. And when you tell farmers to do this, they'll look at you one kind and go and look at you and say, this is how I do it. I've been doing this for years. How do you educate them? We have to tell them this is what happens. This is being transparent about it, right? And then to right the wrongs, and then to basically look at what the reality is when they see the reality of the impact of the things that they do, and yet we have a better alternative, maybe not immediate, but something which can drive for longer term. People will get a buy-in. Then there's greater commitment, not just by the leaders, but also by the team, because it's not just about getting the top leadership and the managers to do, but you need to sustain and build that trust amongst the whole organization that this is something that we want to do as an organization. All right. And so these are some basic principles of successful goal setting. And one is being attached to the goal. How do you drive commitment, right? And attachment to the goal could mean a lot of things. For the big stakeholders, for the shareholders, it will be basically putting their money there, or putting the neighborhood where they live, their family live right there. For the people who work, right? And for clarity is, so why is it? How can we be transparent? This is what we want to do. How do we communicate that goal that we want to do, the long-term goal that we want to achieve? Nothing vague, but something very definite, such as we will reduce or we'll stop doing business in a certain way. We will stop investing, or we'll stop doing the traditional production of oil plantations in this way. Or I will only buy coffee, right, from all our coffee farmers, coffee producers, are going to be done sustainably in a green way, right? That is very clear, and it also creates challenge, right? So because now everyone does things in a certain way. Let's say way A or X, right? And then subsequently, no, we want all the products to be like this. This is how we do it. We set the standard, we set the challenge. Yes, it's difficult, but when you put it in terms of the clarity of why you do it and putting commitment, if you do it in this way, I will commit, I will buy from you, I will do this from you. And this is something which is very important, because the trust, the trust building, the communication part of it, right, builds commitment towards the bigger goal. Because this is, again, it's not going to be a 6 months or 1 year or 2 year thing. It will be a 5 years, 10-year type of work that needs to be done, because this is trying to rectify things that has happened over the past 2-3 decades or so, right? Okay, and the last part of it, right, apart from the engaging top leadership, as well as the commitment towards long-term goals, is to look at establishing key metrics and measurements. I just wanted to link back to just now we were saying about awareness. One of the top sustainable business trends at 2023, you look at number 2, is sustainability gets cool at work. There is a trend where there's more sustainability training being done in organizations all over the world. So that's an interesting trend. So just to dovetail with that point earlier. But in terms of trends in 2023, I've pointed out these 3 in the red boxes. Companies learn to measure the unmeasurable. Carbon disclosure becomes mandatory, and natural capital earns investor interest. All 3 points towards the fact that metrics and measurement becomes critical, right? What do you mean by that? When companies learn to measure the unmeasurable, it means that people are learning to see that when they talk about green, you need to be able to measure things which traditionally is not commonly measured, right? In terms of the carbon emissions, in terms of the energy use, and so on, in terms of square footage of how much green land is there, the diversity, the biodiversity in the area. So that's important because it's a metric used to communicate to your funders, to your stakeholders, that this is the impact of your sustainability effort, right? The second part is carbon disclosure becomes mandatory, right? That is something that's happening even in Singapore right now. I think the carbon tax is coming in, kicking in slowly, right? And the part of it means if disclosure becomes mandatory, that means you need to start tracking it, you need to start measuring it, so that you can show that yes, I'm emitting so much, I'm reducing it and what so and not. So that's important. And the last part is natural capital and investor interest. This is also pointing towards that money, capital now, right? Investors are looking at measurements, right? In terms of how their money going in, right, has an impact towards greed, right? So again, measurements come in place. And therefore, 3 out of 10 sustainable business trends are looking at measurements and metrics, right? And so the role of regulators, again, dovetailing from the earlier point, right? I totally agree that regulators need to come into space because otherwise everyone will count things in their own way, right? A simple analogy would be, some people count in centimeters, some people count in inches, some people count in yards or li or whichever, right? So how do you compare? Or how do you compare the size of a handphone, right? Is it in terms of the thickness, the length, in terms of the size, screen size, and so on? What is that measurement that we have, right? And so regulators play a critical role in helping to establish key metrics and measurement in the sector. This is an example of where the Singapore Stock Exchange, has established a common set of core ESG metrics, right? In terms of the economic, the environmental, the social, and governance, right, measures. So basically, anyone who's listed there has to present these metrics somewhat, somewhere, some permutation of it. But it also it's easier for people to see, right? In terms of basically where does one company stand vis-a-vis another, right? So regulators are important because it helps to shape the metrics and measurement use. But internal to the company, so how do they do it, right? I'm a guy who panders a lot towards the balanced scorecard because I think it's nice for the typical one is financial, customer, internal business process, and learning and growth. But can we put in the sustainability element in there, right? And then these are some samples of how people put in the sustainability element. They added in 2 more boxes: the social perspective and the environmental perspective, right? And I think it's good in the sense that then management will look at the dashboard, which puts a social as well as environmental perspective on the same level, on the same playing field as your financial outcomes, your customer outcomes, the process outcomes, as well as learning growth. So that's great that it's all on the level playing field. And therefore, when we make decisions, it's all there at that level, right? The question that is being put out there is that should the sustainability metrics be by itself? Should it be from 4 we increase to 6, add 2 more, or should social environment perspective be incorporated in the 4? Why is this important, right? People may ask. The good thing of having 6 is that it's all an even playing field, but the risk of it is that it becomes silo, right? And therefore, people look at social and environmental separate from financial, customer, and internal business processes. That's the risk. Then it becomes a CSR project. It becomes something separate. The KPIs can be dragged away from the financial outcomes, the customer outcomes, and the process outcomes. And that may not be desirable, right, for an organization. So the other perspective is maybe incorporate or embed the social and environmental perspective within the 4. So that's something which organizations kind of can think about, can consider and explore moving ahead, right? Yeah. So I'm ambivalent about it. I haven't decided on that, right? Yeah. So those are the 3 key focus areas that I think businesses can look into in terms of aligning sustainability with business performance. As again, I reiterate, is the how to gather, how to get top leadership management buy-in, and that's essential. And I put in the framework there, right? So that's a reference point. The other thing is to how do you build commitment towards long-term goals? Basically, everyone must be in it for a long run because it's not a quick win situation. It's something which everyone needs to build towards, not just top leadership, but everyone along the way. And therefore, you need to basically come up with very effective ways of goal setting, right? Such that people are always aligned, people are always focused towards a longer term goal, right? And the last part is establish key metrics and measurement, because what doesn't measure doesn't get done, right? And whether you want to use a balanced scorecard with 4 pillars or 6 pillars, that's open. I haven't decided which one is better personally, but I think most essentially it needs to be incorporated, those elements within your dashboard, within the measurements has to be established such that it meets the industry sector or the regulator standard, right? As well as the industrial sector that you're working in, right? That's the gist of what I'm sharing today. I'm open to any inputs or questions that you have from the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faiz. Let's see what question we have for you.
I think this has been very technical. 1 minute. Yeah, I think it has been really, really good. It has been a lot more data that has come. It has, I think I should talk about that. Some concept has been consolidated in a block chart, right, Mr. Prince? Right? A lot of practical knowledge you have put it into block things. So the more important is basically that micro, small, or medium enterprises are more like a flat organizations, and they definitely most of the SMEs not even have got any digital dashboard or probably any statistical dashboard where they can go through the statistics and take a decision. So the digital penetrations is one of the things that we probably have to speak once we talk about the micro, small, or medium enterprises, right? So in that scenario, that how do you see there are so many type of reporting pattern that is available on this particular area, and that is once again a more confusing for the small enterprises to start with. So do you think that any standard practice that probably a small enterprises can adopt and start with? Do you have any standard guidelines, or probably from the Asia Pacific perspective?
Okay, this is me taking it off the top of my head, right? I think for the small micro businesses, right, the key element that they have to do is go back to the first principles in terms of one is basically how what they are doing in terms of yes, they are doing business, they're trying to build something that draws financial outcome, right? But beyond the financial outcome, how does it sustain itself? Put it simply, like for example, if I'm doing farming, I have a little garden, I grow vegetables, right, and everything, right? And with the vegetables, then I have some waste, right? What can I do with the waste, right? I look at it in terms of if I have some BSLs, black soldier flies, I can throw it in. I can do grow the worms, and then that will go expand it into fish farm, right? Because the feed can be feed for the chicken, for the fish, and everything, and then it goes to the cycle. I would go to actually just sharing it very simply, because that will basically for them that's economically it will make sense for them. You ask me, right? And then from there, then if they can scale it up, it's great to scale it up. But I think the responsibility of really coming up with the standards or the reporting standards, the requirements actually comes from the bigger organizations, and that's where I kind of speak more about because like for example, Nestle buys coffee from small farmers, small cluster farms, right? And when they buy from them, right, they set certain standards, they set certain expectations in terms of how the coffee is grown and everything, and that should be the base. The reason why I would say that they will have a greater impact because they are the main buyers, and when they buy like that, they can create greater shifts in terms of the environment and how things work. The smaller businesses, I think, is within their own area of influence. What can they do? How can they optimize the resources that they use? If I use 1 hectare land, right? How can I create value from the 1 hectare land without damaging the ecosystem, right? Why I don't want to damage the ecosystem? Because 5-10 years down the road, it's going to affect me. And that's the level of education that you need to do for them. In terms of, I have this 1 hectare land, what can I do with it? What are the options that I have? And those education, the best practices is how we can improve the quality of life of the small micro businesses. An example, yeah.
See, further to start with, see, if you talk about the input, raw material input, right? This also plays a very big role, right? So do you think that is there any platform where sustainable raw material sourcing can be made easy?
I think that okay, when you talk about sustainable raw material sourcing, right?
Yeah, you
Okay.
talk about recycle or circular economy, the
Mm,
refurbish, all those things. Because see, once we talk about one side, you're talking about let's use it, but the other side we have not put enough efforts to incentivize or probably make that type of products available, right?
yep.
Yesterday, one of our speaker, renowned, one of the speaker from renowned MNC, have been referring that there are companies, those who are into refurbished business, they are telling that European companies are paying more to them. So they are just thinking that refurbishing business is now picking up, and they are just moving completely into refurbished business. So that is the thing. So, but how to source it? I know one.
Okay.
I came across one initiative of Europe where they have put up a framework to list down all the companies who are into circular economy and
Mm-hmm.
who have got a recycled products and various other things, and even some of the what is called natural fiber, natural products, and all those things. So that type of product sourcing has been enabled on the platform. But if you look into the India or look into Asia and all things, I think no such platform is available.
I think yes, maybe it's not so obvious in terms of the platforms for Asia, India. I speak on Indonesia because I spent a bit of time in India. I'll be there next week again. And I think the potential of repurposing or reuse materials, right? Making bags out of plastic and repurposing materials out there,
Right.
there is that potential. But it has to be balanced, I think, because when you look at it this way, if the the cost of actually repurposing it cost not just financial, but also in terms of environment. No, to repurpose things, you have to clean the plastic. There's water is going to be used. You have to there's energy going to be used. Then you have to transport it, right? Then there's more CO2 emissions going to be used. So if you look at it from that perspective, right, it's not so straightforward. uh, yes, there is an economic opportunity there, right? It creates employment, it creates income for people, right? But it needs to be balanced in terms of basically how far you want to reach it, right? Like for example, avocados. No, if your family loves to eat avocados, but then basically, and you want to buy it and you don't mind paying so much, right? But the cost of it actually it's not really reflected really in the price of the avocado because it gets flown over for how many thousands of miles, and then the cold chain that is involved in it, the amount of emissions. So actually, the cost of it is a lot more, right? So that's the part where I kind of struggle sometimes when you talk about basically repurposing, and because I think the best way to look at things is to really reconsider consumption habits that people have, right? And how we adjust our consumption habits. Like for example, how many shoes do you really need? How many bags do you need, right? So that's the part where I know we're all guilty of it. No, we have how many shoes and bags and so on, right? But the thing is that is it really necessary? Are we driven by something? And when actually, yes, you can repurpose things, but it's if it's repurposing so that it fits to consumption, I'm really not sure whether we are really solving the problem right now. Yeah.
Okay.